We want to know what the Indian government is going to do about this resolution. We want to know.
Just 1 minute, please. 1 minute.
We want an answer from the Honorable Prime Minister whether Government of India is going to support this resolution.
Okay, Dr. Maitre.
Whether it's a UPA ally or a rival, the demand from Tamil Nadu's political forces is united.
War crimes and human rights violations in Sri Lanka.
New Delhi must vote against Colombo at the UNHRC and favour the US-backed war crimes resolution on Sri Lanka. But in the midst of the domestic political ruckus, New Delhi still seems indecisive and concerned about the diplomatic fallout.
Please, the Prime Minister, please, so open your silence and say something on this issue.
To calm the Tamil temper, the Prime Minister wrote a letter to Karunanidhi in which he said, and I quote, "With regard to the resolution in United Nations Human Rights Council, we are engaged with all parties in an effort to achieve an outcome that is forward-looking and ensures that rather than deepening confrontation and mistrust, a way forward is found."
What view on this issue will be taken will be determined as and when the time will be finalized in respect of the meeting of the Human Rights Commission.
But the political fire in Tamil Nadu is fueled further by these pictures showing the bullet-ridden body of 12-year-old Balachandran, the son of slain LTTE chief Vellupillai Prabhakaran. Allegedly killed by Sri Lankan forces, it's part of several alleged war crime videos from the last days of the war against the LTTE. While Colombo has denied the allegations, the focus back home is on the stand New Delhi will take. With Veera Raghav in New Delhi, Meenakshi Upreti.
Meanwhile, the Sri Lankan High Commissioner to India, Prasad Karyavasam, spoke to CNN-IBN senior editor Suhasini Haidar a short while ago. He discredited the Channel 4 video, claiming it was concocted.
Parliament has been adjourned over India's vote at the Human Rights Council, and MPs are demanding very clearly that the government actually vote against Sri Lanka if that vote comes up next week. Your reaction to that?
It's very unfortunate that Tamil Nadu parliamentarians have chosen to disturb the August Parliament of India for something very simple, that they have perhaps been totally ill-informed, misinformed by whoever who has briefed them about Sri Lanka situation, especially since none of these parliamentarians have not visited Sri Lanka in the recent past.
How do you refute that kind of video evidence?
It is concocted, uncorroborated and unsubstantiated. It is produced in Channel 4 in London, and this is time to bring disrepute and vitiate the atmosphere in terms of Human Rights Council meeting in Geneva. But we are concerned about human rights of our people. We are investigating on our own. We have appointed Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission, and they have come up with recommendations as to how we should proceed, and we will proceed on that basis.
Why don't you say that you will investigate a photograph of a minor being killed in that way?
Surely we will, but we have not been given the footage. That is the problem. This footage should have been first placed before the government of Sri Lanka and for us to examine.
Pressure is certainly building on Dr. Manmohan Singh's government. You've been meeting officials in the government. Have you been given any assurances of how India might vote if this comes to a vote at the Human Rights Council?
India is our closest neighbor, closest friend. India is a responsible, not only regional power, responsible world power. They will take the right decision at the right time.
The resolution that has come to the Human Rights Council very simply asks the Sri Lankan government to implement what its own LLRC, the Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Committee, has actually put into its report. Why the opposition? Why the resistance to a resolution that's very simply saying implement your own reconciliation commission?
We should be allowed time and space to implement our own recommendations. We need time to study. We have done things very fast. We have resettled 300,000 people in 1.5 years. Nobody has done that. There is no reason for international community to get involved in our implementation until we are given time to implement it.
Okay, the Sri Lankan High Commissioner speaking exclusively to CNN-IBN. The big question, atrocities against Tamils in Lanka. Can India afford to be silent? That's our talking point tonight. And joining me now, V. Narayan Swamy, Minister of State in the Prime Minister's office, Subramanian Swamy, President of the Janata Party, Father Gaspar Raj, social researcher and someone who's been a supporter of the Sri Lankan Tamil cause. KC Singh, former diplomat, joining us here, and Veera Raghav, senior editor, CNN IBN, who tracks southern India very closely for us. First, you, Mr. Narayan Swamy, it seems that the Indian government at the moment wants to sit on the fence on the Sri Lankan issue. You don't want to outrightly condemn the government of Rajapaksa because of diplomatic factors, but at the same time you want to play lip service to the Tamil cause because of political pressures. You're sitting on the fence.
No, it is not like that. The Indian government has to see what kind of resolution that is coming before the committee. In fact, as far as our Indian government is concerned, we are keenly watching the resolution that is coming there. Only after going through the resolution, Indian government can take a position, because we cannot offhand without seeing the resolution, because the draft resolution which has been circulated, ultimately when it comes before the discussion and thereafter when amendments are being given there, ultimately what is the final resolution that has to be seen before the Government of India to take a position
Mr.
on
Narayan
that.
Swamy, let me quote what the Prime Minister says. He says, with regard to resolution in UN Human Rights Council, we are engaged with all parties in an effort to achieve an outcome that is forward-looking and ensures that rather than deepening confrontation and mistrust, a way forward is found. To my mind, it's a classic way of saying we haven't made up our mind. We don't know what to do. This is a classic example of the government not willing to commit itself. We are showing those horrible pictures that are coming in from Sri Lanka. Surely the Indian government wants to take a stronger stand?
No, I'm very sorry about it, because as far as our government is concerned, we are committed to the condemning any kind of human rights violation. Even as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, when LLRC gave its finding, the Sri Lankan government has been asked to implement that. They have not implemented within the stipulated time, therefore the resolution is coming. As far as the UN resolution is concerned,
yes,
because we cannot talk like a political party as a responsible government until the wordings of the resolution is seen.
Okay.
The government of India cannot say anything on that. This is the clear position.
Okay.
But our government, one minute, our government is committed to the Sri Lankan Tamil cause.
Okay, hold on.
We have been doing lot of development activities for the welfare of the Tamil population in Sri Lanka.
But you're waiting, for the wording. You're waiting for the wording of the resolution. Subramanian Swamy, you've been very critical of the LTT in the past. Has the time though come to take a hard look at the war crimes committed by the Sri Lankan government as well? Dr. Subramanian Swamy? Can you hear me, Dr. Swamy?
Yes, very clearly now.
Dr. Swamy, you've been critical of the LTT in the past. Has the time come to take a hard look at the war crimes committed by the Sri Lankan government as well?
I think the time for hard look is how to ensure the security of the Tamil people in Sri Lanka by having a devolution of in the constitution, and it is that which should receive our focus.
What about war crimes and human rights violations? What about war crimes and human rights violations, Dr. Swamy?
That is your CNN IBN inference from whatever little has come out in terms of videos elsewhere, which we don't know what the authenticity is.
Are you saying there have been no war crimes? Are you saying there have been no war crimes and human rights violations in Sri Lanka?
I am saying that within the context of a war with the terrorist forces and their capacity to use civilians as a bodyguard, the amount of war crimes, alleged war crimes, is what has happened in other places elsewhere.
Okay.
And it is also what we are accused of in Kashmir and Manipur.
Okay, Father Gaspar Raj, as a Tamil sympathizer, respond to what you've just heard Dr. Swamy say. There are those who will say that those who live by the sword will die by it. The LTT was a terrorist group. It killed hundreds of innocents during the war years. Now you cannot get up and suddenly say there are human rights violations that are being committed against the LTT. As Dr. Swamy says, tomorrow that might be well said about the Lashkar-e-Toiba or any insurgent terrorist group.
See, whatever happens to the resolution on March 19, but the world accepts today that serious human rights violations did take place in Sri Lanka, and they could amount to crimes against humanity. I think I don't even want to respond to Mr. Subramanian Swamy, because there is a global consensus that human rights violations and crimes against humanity were committed in Sri Lanka.
There is also a consensus, sir, that a terrorist is a terrorist. There is also a consensus. No one will justify human rights violations, but there is also a consensus that a terrorist can no longer be called a freedom fighter.
Rajdeep, nobody condones acts of terrorism if it were committed by LTTE. Yes, nobody condones violence, but then, you know, the violence unleashed by the Sri Lankan government against the Tamils were very systematic and programmed, and no one would expect a government to, you know, gather up people, 300,000 people in one place and unleash aerial bombardment and unlimited shelling of the areas, denying food, medicine. And there is a report by the United Nations Secretary General's report. Do you say that, I mean, we can't accept any report by the globally credible agencies, including the UN Secretary General's panel report, which clearly indicates that serious violations took place? And how can we say that? How can we say that? I mean, because terrorists were carrying arms and the illegitimate government.
Your point is taken. Let me come to KC Singh. KC Singh, does India have any real choice here but to walk a tightrope? We can't really create a confrontational situation, surely, with Colombo at this stage.
Rajdeep, a country has to generate choices. I think we are acting out of reflexes. You've seen on Libya we were wrong. We went and voted against the resolution, and you see where Gaddafi is. On Syria we kind of dithered, but we were saved by Russia and China. Now India has to really decide what exactly, how it wants to be received in the Committee of Nations as a country that on specific issues, which not only are issues which are brought in by UN or by the West, but can be traced to our own heritage and our own culture, whether it's Buddhism or our own past, or in terms of Ahimsa, in terms of Mahatma Gandhi, that human rights are something which are cherished in India.
So human rights are just as universal.
Humanitarian values, human rights are very. Now, if we come to this particular problem, 2009, it's been 3 years. Why is there suddenly a big noise being made by parties in Tamil Nadu? Same DMK had abandoned WICO, had gone without them in 2009. They won the election. They're quite busy to go along with the central government. The UN Secretary General set up a separate committee of 3 experts who went into everything, but the Sri Lankan government did not fully cooperate with them. Sri Lankan government on their own set up their own commission, the LLRC. Is the Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission. Now the truth lies somewhere between the two. The UN experts are saying that at the very least, they are not saying whether somebody is guilty or not guilty. They said at the very least, an independent international inquiry is called for. That is what they are saying.
Okay, you're saying at least a minimalistic stand needs to be taken by India now. But Veera Raghav, can this blow up on the face of the central government, or are the Tamil parties also playing to the gallery? A video comes out after months, suddenly they protest. Who knows, life will return to normal. They too seem to be playing to a gallery, to a particular constituency.
To be fair, Rajdeep, the issue has been kept alive by those who have been fighting it at the UNHRC, at the diaspora level in terms of the Tamil community. As far as Tamil political parties are concerned, yes, Sri Lanka is an issue that is often taken up when there is a political need for it. You look at the DMK, well, yes, they need to have a political revival in Tamil Nadu. You've seen Jayalalitha take a strong anti-LTTE stand in the past, but after the Tamil issue erupted in 2009, you saw her taking a very strong anti-Colombo stand as far as her political selling point is concerned. So expecting this to emerge into an issue which can break an alliance at the center may be a little far-fetched to think of it, but we must also realize that there is a core constituency which is of hardliners. It may be a very minor constituency, but that's a very important constituency in Tamil Nadu.
It is an important constituency, but Mr. Narayan Swamy, you come from Puducherry. Will it become even more difficult for leaders like you, your allies from Tamil Nadu, if the government doesn't take a firm position on war crimes and human rights violations in Sri Lanka against Tamils? Will your position become difficult?
No, as far as the issue relating to the human rights violation there and killing of innocent people by the Sri Lankan army, if it is proved, definitely one has to support that. And from my side, I would like to say, during Parliament election 2009, the so-called the political parties in Tamil Nadu, some of the small parties, they put up a video about the atrocities on the LTTE, but you know, it did not cut much ice there. But one thing is very clear, because there should be a subtle distinction between the innocent Sri Lankan people and the terrorist group of LTTE. Because as a political party, national political party, that is Congress party, we will never compromise on the assassination of our leader Rajiv Gandhi by this terrorist LTTE group.
Right,
we are
so
opposed to that organization. And
you're saying make a distinction. You're saying make a distinction between innocent Tamils and those who are part of the LTT's war force. You're saying make that distinction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Swamy.
No, one more point. Because therefore,
yes,
our government, our Honorable Prime Minister, our UPA chairperson, they are kind enough to extend all support to the Sri Lankan government, financially, and also the power project, railway project, housing construction. Our foreign minister.
Point taken.
We are giving
point
lot of
taken.
money
You're
for,
saying
for,
your
for
relation.
developing the
Your point is taken, sir. Your point is taken. Let me come to Dr. Subramanian Swamy. Dr. Swamy, leaders like yourself, are you isolated today within Tamil Nadu on the question of the Sri Lankan Tamils, or as Veera Raghav suggests, it's only a minority voice which is vocal about the fact that they would like to come out openly and support the LTT. That a majority of Tamils are concerned about human rights violations, but will make a distinction between LTT and innocent Tamils.
Well, on the 11th of February, I addressed a meeting in Madurai, which is one of the largest ever held in that site. And I spoke about this, and I said that we are Indians first and Tamil second, and there was wild cheering. I don't think these LTT types who parade themselves as pro-human rights have cut much ice.
But how do you then explain the fact that how do you explain the fact that parties like the DMK, the AIDMK, which have large support, have taken up this course? Whether it is that of
well, you see, as far yeah, I know what you're saying. As far as DMK is concerned, it is actually an assault on their ideology, which is separateness. Dravidian separateness, which is a non-existent concept, because there is no such thing as a racial Dravidian. And as far as Jayalalitha is concerned, she is just chicken, and she has taken this stand because our party is supported by these Dravidian elements.
Okay.
The Dravidian movement elements.
Veera Raghav, you want to quickly respond to Dr.
I don't
Veera
think
Raghav wants to respond to you, sir. Hold on.
Dr. Swamy, in as much as you want to discredit the LTT, at the end of the day, is it at all possible to distinguish between the Sri Lankan Tamil cause and the sentiment we speak about from an Indian point of view and to those pro-LTT sympathizers? Yes, we can distinguish between the war crimes that were committed as a thing of the past and an sense of justice being delivered to the process of rehabilitation in Sri Lanka. But is it possible to distinguish between the pro-LTT voices and those who are championing the Sri Lankan Tamil cause?
The only way of doing that is for the government of India to move a substitute resolution in the UN Human Rights Commission to say that the Committee of Nations calls upon President Rajapaksa to immediately devolve the constitution, power in the constitution, and enable the Tamil people to have a state of their own in which within the single Sri Lanka they can pursue their normal.
So you're saying devolution is the solution. Father Kasper Raj, you know, the Sri Lankan government for its part has made it clear it was involved in the war with the LTT. The LTT too must face charges of war crimes as a terror organization. Can we separate innocent Sri Lankan Tamils from those who are seen to be part of a terror outfit?
See, I fully agree with Dr. Swamy when he says that power has to be devolved, particularly with the land powers and revenue generating powers and also policing powers. If that happens immediately, that's too good for the Tamils for the moment. But you know, our foreign minister was there, and he was promised that 13th Amendment Plus will be implemented, and even before he landed back in New Delhi, Rajapaksa's have the audacity to announce that we didn't promise anything such to the foreign minister of India. See, if you can't even come forward to implement the 13th Amendment or 13th Amendment Plus, to believe that the Sinhala chauvinistic establishment will give anything substantial to the Tamils is kind of, we should be living in fantasy wonderland. Okay. It has not happened, you know. And
there
again,
is a
the
trust
60 years of struggle is not after all for some.
You're saying you can't trust President Rajapaksa. Given that given that situation, KC Singh...
Definitely, it is Sinhala chauvinist, yes.
Okay,
it is Sinhala chauvinistic political ideology that is driving the entire polity.
Given that situation, KC Singh, given that situation, the government today made it clear that there will be no country, India doesn't support a country-specific resolution. The fear, of course, is tomorrow, let's say, there was a resolution against alleged human rights violations in Kashmir. Where would India stand there tomorrow? Do you believe it's therefore we cannot jump into this situation on the basis of emotion or on the basis because there are political pressures put by Tamil parties? We have to look at the larger national interest. And the larger national interest may be in taking a more balanced approach towards Colombo.
Rajdeep, 3-4 points. This is the traditional argument given that we do not support single country resolutions. I think time for that is over. India should stop being defensive. We have not been catching people, binding them, their hands behind their backs and shooting them in the head. And certainly if any soldier has done it, he has been brought to justice or ought to be brought to justice. How can a democratic, civilized country like India, simply out of fear that someday this may happen to you, start taking a stand like this?
But this involves a terror group which is responsible for the assassination of your former Prime Minister.
I think the Minister of State correctly pointed out the real reason was Government of India continued to be reticent because Rajapaksa read it right. He realized that because Rajiv Gandhi's blood was on the hands of Prabhakaran, they could do what they wanted. Now, you have to make a distinction between bringing justice, bringing Prabhakaran to justice and killing civilians or killing innocent people. What has revived the controversy, Rajdeep, is the new tapes which have come out, which are going to be broadcast tomorrow or day after, showing the son of Prabhakaran shot in the chest at close range.
That's right.
Now, where in the world is it justified that if somebody is a terrorist, you shoot his family, you shoot civilians who are being used as a shield, you use cannons to fire into a no-fire zone? Now, this is something that Rajapaksa has got away with. And remember that Sri Lanka today is a much more autocratic, much more authoritarian, military-dominated, family-dominated country. Are we going to encourage this, or are we going to encourage them to do what they have promised time and again, which is bring people to justice?
Veera Raghav, KC Singh, Kaspar Raj, Subramanian Swamy and Mr. Narayan Swamy, appreciate your joining us here on our talking point tonight. That video of Prabhakaran's son, alleged video which has been shown across the world, will no doubt raise troubling questions both here in New Delhi and in Colombo and world capitals.